is number one.
Notre Dame with a miracle win as the
clock runs out. Notre Dame has scored.
Okay, as a form of recap, our players certainly enjoyed their experience in Chicago and the Shamrock Series. Just a great atmosphere for our team, great win, and certainly one where we were able to put together a solid effort on both sides of the ball. So with that, we look to build on it against an outstanding Stanford football team. A lot of things stand out about this football team. First, they're a well-coached team in all phases, offense, defense, and special teams. They're a physical football team. They play that way up front, in the back end, their running backs, tight ends. It's pretty apparent across the board the kind of team that you're going to play when you face Stanford. You just, you put on the film and you see the kind of football team that they have become. And there's a number of matchup issues too. Their tight ends are certainly difficult to match up with. One of the probably, we're going to play a lot of great backs, and I don't want to throw superlatives out about everybody, but Taylor's an outstanding back. He's proven himself. He's a physical player. He can. Gets banged up, comes back, and continues to compete. You could see he's the heart of their football team. He's also one of their captains. Their outside linebackers are very difficult to block. They're active. Murphy and Thomas are outstanding players, and they have really caused havoc with so many teams. Not just this year, but last year as well. Their defense is. Outstanding group. They're very difficult to run the football on, and it's hard to get the ball downfield because the quarterbacks are on constant pressure, and that was the case for us last year. So we'll have to get better as a football team this week. We'll have to improve on our performance against Miami if we want to beat Stanford, and our players understand that the plan we have laid out for them this week is to get better. It's fundamentals, it's technique, it's assignments, it's all of those things. And if they follow the plan's worked pretty good. I think we've won over our last 15 regular season games. I think we're 13-2. So if they follow the plan and really focus on the preparation end of things, we'll be a better football team because we'll need to be against a very good Stanford team. So I'll open it up to questions.
Brian, through 5 games, your defense has played a variety of different offenses, from spread to option to pro style. Is there anything at this point that you guys really haven't seen? And building on that, is there anything that Stanford does that maybe you guys will recognize?
Well, we know the style of offense that they want to play. To answer your first question relative to the varied offenses that we see, that's one of the unique things that we're challenged with not being in a conference. You're getting an assortment from the Big Ten to the ACC to Independent and Navy. You're getting such a variety. So we've seen teams like Navy, obviously, and Michigan State that want to pound the football. We've seen option football and play action with Purdue and Michigan, and certainly a team that has great skill wants to throw the ball down the field. So we have seen a lot of those types of offenses, but Stanford is unique in itself, and not only do they run the ball out of a multiple formations and jumbo packages, but they create great one-on-one matchups. So you would think, well, you play a lot of zone, you have to drop extra players down to defend the run, which gives them one-on-one matchups. So another unique offense and another challenge for us.
At the start of the year, when you guys had some injuries in the secondary and it forced young guys to step in, it would be natural to think that there would be some growing pains, but there doesn't seem to have been too many. Does that surprise you?
No, there have been growing pains. You probably haven't seen them as readily as we do on a day-to-day basis. And the growing pains are certainly expected pains. They're not, oh my goodness, we're not doing this, or he can't do that. But there are certainly areas of growth and development, and we need more growth back there as well. And not just back there. You know, it's easier for a young player for us to all see that growth, but I challenge all of our players to that growth. Manti Te'o played great on Saturday. He played, in my opinion, his best game. It's hard for a guy like Manti Te'o to keep pushing that bar, but he does, and it's harder to see it. It's easier to see with those young guys. So my point is that everybody is challenged every day about, up in their game, not just the defensive backs.
And lastly, for me, I know you guys are wearing pink accessories this weekend. And there's been a big initiative around all levels of football for that. Just for you personally, how important is that?
Well, it's part of, my life. And the foundation that we run centers around, obviously, breast cancer and cancer research and eradicating cancer. So I think everybody in football, everybody around the country recognizes now that this time of the year focuses on that. And that's an incredible, powerful thing. For that to be in the National Football League and high school football and college football, and we'll get a chance to get everybody's eyes and attention towards that movement.
Brian, talking a few minutes about the plan, does the plan ever include talking about big picture, about what you see this team doing for the year? Do you ever talk to them about, okay, we're 5-0, this is what we can do?
No, it's not brought up at all. We don't talk from that level of 30,000 feet because it really doesn't do us any good. Really, all that we can focus on is what we can control on a day-to-day basis. Now, when I do maybe press conferences or talk to the media, sometimes I let our team know, listen, I'll talk in those terms. But amongst us, it's about today and what we do today.
Just talk about the pulse of the team. Do you sense that they're beginning to see that, that they're heading in a direction that something special can happen if they keep on doing the right things?
Oh, certainly. They understand that based upon some of the things that I mentioned, that if they continue to do the things on a day-to-day basis, and that's the hard thing. We're talking about 18 to 21-year-olds that are easily distracted, and so the charge is to keep them focused on what they need to do to get better as a football player. And I've worked this plan for a number of years. I've had great success with it. If they choose to continue to follow it, they're going to continue to have success. So it's that trust element of just stay focused on what we can handle and what we need to handle, and we'll be fine.
You mentioned the other day about the NFL films being here. When you had a much better, or this streak went longer in 2009 at Cincinnati, but you didn't have NFL films coming in. You didn't have game day coming in. Does that complicate things at all? The outside noise, and what did you learn from that year that maybe can help translate into helping this year?
Yeah, I think each program has its different challenges. All of our players at Cincinnati live downtown, and they lived amongst, neighbors and well-wishers, and, that sometimes is even more difficult relative to keeping them focused. So I think each program I've had has presented different challenges, but I will go back to the process and keeping them focused on the process on a day-to-day basis. Not only myself, but all of our coaches. Our coaches understand that as well. So yeah, we're singing the same tune. It's not different.
And as a coach, I know you're always worried about possibly overlooking an opponent. Is it easy this week just because Stanford has the win over USC? They've had success against you the past few seasons. Is it easy to keep the team focused on this game? Yeah,
they haven't beaten Stanford, and I would say that if there's one team that physically has beaten us it's been Stanford, and they know that. I think secondly, they turn the film on and watch what they did to their opponents. They physically intimidated their opponents, and that's clear. So they even see when they turn on the film and watch the way they play the game, they don't need much push from me to know what to expect this weekend.
And last one for me, Stefan Tuitt hasn't been quite as productive the past two games. Has it been more of what the opponents are focusing on him more, or is something happening
We would
there?
beg to differ. His numbers didn't show a productive player, but he was outstanding for us in what we asked him to do against Miami. And I'm not just trying to take the counterpoint on this. This is how he was graded out by the defensive coaches and in my observation as well. He was very, very effective for us in what we asked him to do on Saturday. Yeah.
To your left, Brian. I'm sure as you came in here, you were prepared for an increase of the, quote, noise, but can you ever be completely prepared for that until you actually get into that moment here?
Well, I think I'm seasoned enough to know what noise is and how that affects 18 to 21-year-olds on a day-to-day basis, as well as coaches. So I think I'm aware of it. I think the difference is that the noise is there regardless of whether you win or lose. It's there constantly. We've sold out this stadium since the 70s, so there's 81,000 people here every week. So I don't think it ever, goes down. It's always there. It's just making sure that your football team is focused on their preparation. And so I don't think that that's much different in terms of what I've tried to do week to week, whether I was at Grand Valley State and we won, 24 consecutive games, and now the Detroit newspaper was covering us. That was a lot of noise for us. It's just on a larger scale, but it's still the same noise.
And you have to, you've obviously had to prepare for it and spend more time on it and deal with it more than ever before.
Absolutely. And I think when we get our players back in practices and meetings, we make sure that we set the tone clearly and clearly communicate what they need to do to be successful each week. So I guess here at Notre Dame, you have to make sure that you communicate directly with your players about all of those outside distractions, and I make sure that I do that each and every week.
The last 2 years, you've been defeated pretty decisively by Stanford. What areas can you tangibly say that you've significantly narrowed the gap? Now, of course, their quarterback leaving from last year helps, but
sure.
What can you say that you know for sure that you have done and are capable of narrowing that gap?
Well, I think we're stronger physically, across the board. We're a mature football team. We have a lot of veterans on defense. I think from an offensive line standpoint, we feel like we can handle ourselves much better. We had a ton of negative plays last year. Just a difference, we had, I think, 50-plus running plays, and we had one negative play against Miami, whereas last year we had 20 negative plays. We had penalties. We're a more disciplined team. We're so much further along as it relates to taking care of the football and turnovers. And as you know, last year it was a turnover mistake, negative play, it seemed like every other play. So I think we're so much further along as it relates to how we play the game on Saturday.
Everybody has seen a running back come in the fourth quarter and put up big numbers when the game is over. Cam McDaniel did that again. Not so much this year, but as you see him go through his career, first of all, what do you see from him on a daily basis in practice? And secondly, how do you see his role maybe expanding in the future?
He is a very good running back. And I know, well, you got Sierra Wood, you've got Theo Riddick, you got George Atkinson. They're really good running backs, too. We have 4 running backs. It's hard to get them all touches, really. We're struggling trying to get those 3 guys. Cam McDaniel is one heck of a good running back. He runs the ball as effectively as any of those 3. He's used to the zone, inside, outside zone. He came from that offense. He came from the shotgun offense, and he runs the ball exceedingly well. We just have no hesitation of putting him in the game. We only have one football. That's the problem.
Just to clarify something, you've referred to it a couple times about the 6th game being the cutoff for a kid's year of eligibility. I don't understand. I'm not sure anybody else does. Is that a rule change?
Yeah. No, if you play after the 6th game, then you can't use the 20% rule for the equivalency of playing. So if I play you in game 7, then you lose your red shirt.
And that's always been?
That's always been the case.
Okay.
Well, at least as long as I've followed the rule. But I can get you some further clarification. Brian's an expert on NCAA legislation, so I'm sure he'll put something together and check with our compliance. And we can get back to you if we're not giving you the right information.
Thank you.
Yep.
Coach, you mentioned Manti. You felt like he had his best game, and he's
Yeah.
keep pushing the bar. Do you ever worry with him with everything he's been through and having gone to Hawaii and back that you have to back off him a little bit, or is it just that's not part of who he is?
Well, I would say that if there was a concern for me, it was going to be this weekend because, obviously there was some travel there and coming back and all the things that went on emotionally. You might think that the average person would have a little bit of a dip in energy and focus, and it turned out to be the opposite. He was dynamic as a playmaker. He was making some plays that he hasn't made all year, and I think I would probably resign to the same fact that you are, is that he's just a unique individual, and it doesn't affect him.
When you took the job, obviously was a high-profile recruit. I don't think Cincinnati got involved with him, but did you know who he was? He didn't play it. He wasn't a starter all year for Notre Dame as a freshman, but did you have a sense of what you were getting in him?
Well, yes and no. Yes, I knew of him because he was the national recruit that was from Hawaii that went to Notre Dame. So that was, if you followed college football at all, you followed that. I didn't know what kind of player he was until I turned the film on and watched him play as a freshman, and then saw that he was a guy that shouldn't probably have been playing as a freshman. And so knew about him, but also knew that he had a long way to go, and he's made that progress each and every year.
With switching gears to Matthias Farley, when you were recruiting him, were you set on him being a safety? Did you know where you were going to play him, or did you just see a great athlete who learned quickly?
We saw a very bright kid that, as you know, if you know his background, had not played high school football. He started playing soccer. And we saw him as an under-recruited, raw talent that had outstanding ball skills. So we were projecting him, there's no question, in the recruiting process. And so we didn't have a specific position for him because he didn't have enough of a resume to say he was an offensive player or a defensive player.
You mentioned either Saturday or Sunday that you reminded us of this process with Golson, that there's going to be some slips back and so forth. How do you feel like he came out of this Miami game? Where do you see that line going this week?
Well, he did some things. We threw the ball better, clearly, but there were a lot of throws that were left out there that we have to get back, and that's the next stage for him. Is there were some protections that he missed. There were some throws, but he definitely took a step forward in the passing game for us. And certainly it was the first time that we ran him. And what I liked that he did in the running game and showed progress, other than running him, was he went north and south. He wasn't out there shaking and try to make people miss. He put his foot in the ground and he went north and south. So those two particular areas, improvement in the passing game and the way he ran, north and south, were definitely steps forward for us.
Last one from me. Stanford seems like the last team that's going to get involved in a kind of shootout, track meet type game. When you looked at the film, what did you take away from that game with Arizona?
Well, I think that, Arizona's quarterback was outstanding. He played, I don't know that he played at a level that he's never played before because I couldn't have enough film to watch on him, but I hadn't seen a guy play that well. So the quarterback was outstanding. And then Arizona got worn down. They're not a big physical team. Stanford started to exert their will on them. And that's how that game got up into the higher numbers. The quarterback was outstanding for Arizona, and then Stanford just wore them out.
Coach, up here. The NCAA spends a lot of money marketing the concept of student athletes and extolling their virtues and all that. Stanford was in the national championship picture last year. You guys are unbeaten in the top 10 this year. How significant for the sport of college football is it that two of the premier academic institutions in the country are also so successful on the football field as well, for the cynics out there that say it can't be done in the class and on the field both?
Well, I would hope that you would write a story about it, because I feel that strongly that with your statement that it doesn't get enough attention, that you have two outstanding academic institutions that are ranked, so high in terms of graduation rates. And I think there's a report on U.S. News and World Report in terms of the top institutions, and as well as, on the football field. And I know that that's one of the reasons why I came to Notre Dame, is that I wanted to make sure that everybody knew that you could do it in the classroom, and you can certainly do it on the football field.
Has your opinion changed since you've been at Central Michigan, Cincinnati, and Notre Dame? Are you more validated that, yeah, I thought it could be done, but now I know it can be done?
Well, we haven't validated anything yet. I would say that I am not frustrated that you can't do it at Notre Dame. There's hard work just like there is anywhere else in building a program, but in no way do I believe you can't, after my, close to 3 years here at Notre Dame, that you can't be a BCS football team, competitive BCS football team year in and year out.
Coach, after the game Saturday, you talked a little bit about the left side of your line, offensive line, and Watton, Martin, what they've done. How have they learned to play together so well, and what's been their development individually and as a tandem?
Well, I think first, Al, they're very close. They're inseparable off the field. They hang out together. If you go up to team meal, they'll be eating together. So they're very close. And what that obviously brings is a lot of collateral communication about their position and how they can help each other. They don't, for example, if there's a combination block, one of them's not leaving early and letting his buddy hang out on his own. There's that kind of understanding. So I think it's just that both of them are outstanding players, number one. Number two, they're very close friends. And number three, they understand how they work together. They're a better football player, and I think all those things work together. Not that Braxton isn't part of this, or Golick or Lombard, but specifically those guys are pretty close.
Coach, back to your left. Going back to Golson really quickly, was it getting him going against Miami, was that have anything to do with facing two of the best run defenses in the country in the next 2 weeks? Giving them something to think about?
No, I'm not that smart. I'd like to take credit for it, but we're just trying to get that young man out on the field and get the kid playing and having fun and enjoying the experience. And we were just so focused on getting him on the field and giving him an opportunity to compete. That's really what we're all thinking about.
You mentioned him seeming more confident once he got going. Was part of that confidence just being able to run around and have fun rather than thinking too much? Well,
there's a lot. There's a lot of conversations that take place prior to the game. There's a lot of meetings. There's, we're in a process with Everett that every day we're building trust and we're allowing him to have some input in terms of here's what I feel comfortable doing, and so that's all evolving on a day-to-day basis, because we want what you saw. We want somebody who's smiling and having fun and really enjoying it, but also disciplined and getting us in the right plays and making the right checks. So, I guess the easiest way is we're really working hard towards meeting in the middle, and that's getting there. We're getting there.
Coach, to your right. We've talked a lot about the matchup problems that Tyler Eifert can cause a defense. Now from the other side looking in, when you have a 6'8" tight end like Toilolo split wide and a 6'6" tight end split wide like Ertz, what challenges does that present to your defense?
It's a nightmare. I mean, look, Tyler Eifert's the same problem when we split him out. if we put the ball in a good location, he's going to catch it every time. And so, yeah, we've got to have some answers there. If it just becomes matchup every single time, one-on-one, we're going to have to look at some different key coverages. So we're aware of what our problems are, and we'll have to address them if the game shows them to be real issues.
How much does splitting guys out like that help the running game, which is really Stanford's bread and butter?
Helps immensely. I mean, Tyler Eifert was getting a safety on him every time. We ran the ball, I think, 20-something times in a row, 30-something times. We ran the ball 30 times in a row. And we were doing it because they were doubling Eifert. So, and they were not going to let him go one-on-one. So we ran the ball 30 times. And that's a similar situation that Stanford has, and we have to be able to balance that out.
I think one of the more amazing stats with those two tight ends, they have 39 catches, but they average like 17.4 yards. And when you think of tight ends, it's usually more short and controlled. What in their scheme?
Because you have to press them out. You can't give them off coverage. You're just going to throw it to him. He's going to run the corner over every time. So you've got to press him, because you're bringing somebody down in the run game, and you're getting virtually all one-on-one press coverage. So you're throwing the ball down the field. Every route gets converted when it's pressed for the most part. So it just becomes a one-on-one, throw the ball up there. And, some teams have limited that, some have not. And we hope to be the team that can limit that.
And just on another angle, after the Michigan game, you had mentioned that with Everett, he had a very busy class load that week with exams and everything. This is midterm week at Notre Dame. Are there any precautions or other elements that you have to do this week for the players, especially after your first 2 years, that you notice that are needed, or is that overrated?
Oh, no, it's not overrated. I can tell you that. It's something that we have to do. All of our coaches have to know what the schedules look like. We have to make certain that proper time is placed on their academics as well as football. There's got to be a balance there. We're not going to let them say, well, it's midterm week, I can't practice. But we don't want to be so inflexible that if we can give them a little bit of extra time and maybe move a weight training an hour later, we'll try to be flexible. But we have to be quite aware of the schedule. And we've done a pretty good job with it. We can manage it. There's no question about that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Brian, how does your offensive line help Everett at this point? What are they doing to help him with reads or checks or anything like that?
Well, the first thing is we haven't been sacked in, I think, 85 consecutive throws, which helps, obviously. So protecting him, number one. Number two, Braxton is always communicating back if he's not hearing something that he should be hearing. And that goes across. For example, let's say they're in a 3-down defense, and there's a particular check. You're going to hear 3 down, 3 down, 3 down. That communication back to Everett to remind him that it's 3 down. So there's constant communication. You also saw that we're kind of in a sugar huddle with Everett, where the offensive linemen are up out of their stance, turned towards him, so he can look him in the eyes and communicating. So we're really working hard to make sure that entire group is getting good communication and then giving as much feedback to Everett as possible. And that happens during the game. That happens. I make sure that I always pull him with me when we get with the offensive line. He's standing right next to me. So that's happening on a day-to-day basis.
And with Zach Martin, how do you evaluate where he's come from? Obviously, he's pretty solid for you on the left-hand side.
Yes.
That's going to be important this weekend, too.
Yeah, left side, right side, inside. He's a leader. That's where he was a good player for us last year, too, and he's a really good player for us this year. He's just taken his leadership to a new level. He's communicating. He's taking responsibility for all the players on the offensive line. I think he's evolved more as a leader for us more than anything else.
just because of being older? Or?
Yeah. Well, captainship, I think, puts you in a role. He's a captain. I think we've really pushed him out there to kind of take that because he's so well respected by his peers, I think. And then, maturity, coming into play as well.
And then back to the other side of the ball, talking about those defending the tight ends on the perimeter. When a corner's as physical as Bennett, how does that help? What does he have to? How much does that help him counteract that stuff when he's that physical?
Well, I don't know that first of all, they're outstanding blockers, but they don't put them on the perimeter to block the corners. They put them on the perimeter to throw the ball to him. So I don't know that he'll be challenged in that fashion with the big tight ends. The tight ends are in there to block big guys. So when they're out there, I don't know that he's going to get challenged relative to the physical play as much as he's going to have to play the ball well in the air.
Brian, when you look at Stanford, is it fair to say they have a similar blueprint for success the way you guys do, at least football-wise?
Well, I think that they obviously have an incredible academic institution. They have challenges, just as though we have challenges from that standpoint. They recruit nationally. We've done, obviously national recruiting as well. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of similarities there. In terms of the construct of their team, I really don't know. I don't know what they do on a day-to-day basis, but they certainly are well coached, and they're a physical football team, which we want to be as well. So, yeah, I think from the outside looking in, you would say that there's a lot of similarities. I don't know their specific blueprint and how they've put it all together.
Switching gears a bit, when you see a Miami receiver drop a pass, you guys getting some breaks that maybe you didn't last year with fumbles and whatnot and turnovers, it's easy for us to just say Notre Dame's getting the breaks this year, it's falling their way. To what do you attribute that as a head coach?
I don't know that I attribute it to anything other than teams have to execute as well, and you could look at it as a drop or you could look at it as, well, they didn't execute quite as well for whatever reason. Maybe they didn't get enough sleep, they didn't eat well, the plane ride was terrible. I don't know. My point being is that we don't necessarily look at it as, hey, we're getting great breaks. We look at it as, we're forcing teams to execute as well. And, once in a while, those things kind of, as you look at them in totality, they kind of balance out.
Brian, I just was curious about T.J. Jones and sort of maybe the aggressiveness in his game that, I don't know, was there at times last year, but it seems more consistent this year. Is that kind of your evaluation of him, and what kind of step do you think he's taken this season?
I think he's really focused on his craft in terms of route running. He knows that he gets more playing time if he's an aggressive blocker, which gives him more opportunities to be on the field and catch the football. So I think he really understands that his playing time is predicated on being a complete player. And I think the difference between TJ last year and this year is his real focus on being a complete wide receiver in all phases of the game. Vertically, he ran a great comeback route, on Saturday, where he was really precise in and out of his break. And then he's been a much improved blocker. So in all phases, there's a commitment on his end to be the complete player.
I guess a first-time starter or first-year starter that we haven't asked you a whole lot about is Lombard. Where have you seen his game improve over the last 5?
Oh, it's been a constant step for him, and the progression has been positive. There's a long way to go for him. I thought he handled the emotions of coming back to Chicago and, a lot of ticket requests and a lot of scrutiny. I thought he did a nice job on Saturday in handling that emotionally. And I think each and every week we're going to see continued progress. He's far from where we would consider him a finished product, but he's making the right steps.
Just on Golson running the 2-minute was something against Purdue. You went with Tommy. Obviously, the scenario was a lot different on Saturday against Miami at the end of the first half, but just your evaluation of how he did that and how important it was for you to see him go out and do that.
It was very important, and we were hoping to get that opportunity, not at the end of the game, but maybe at halftime, where we could really it was predicated on us picking up some yardage and getting out of a vulnerable field position area for me with him. Once we were able to do that, we went at it and we went through our 2-minute script. And so we were able to get him some work right before the half. We thought he managed it very well. Maybe he managed it a little bit too aggressively. We didn't want the ball thrown to the wide field on that last throw where, you know, there was 1 second left on the clock. If we're at a different stadium, that 1 second's not there. So he was aggressive with it, but I thought he made some strides in being comfortable out there and really doing the right things necessary to be effective.
Just lastly, what kind of a recruiting impact do you think this game has for you guys? I mean, you're recruiting from the same pool as Stanford in a lot of cases. There's a lot of crossover there. So to be able to go into living rooms and say, hey, we won, opposed to, you know, we've lost 3 or 4 straight to these guys, how important do you think that actually is?
I guess I've never really looked at it as a singular game, you know, in the recruiting process, because if you're deciding on Notre Dame based upon the one game, then you shouldn't be coming here anyway. So is it going to be better if you win? Yeah, I wouldn't debate that for a moment. But to focus strictly on a win-loss situation against one team, I don't think it impacts our recruiting.
Let's see if we have any questions from the callers.
If you would like to ask a question over the telephone, please press *1 on your telephone keypad. If you are using a speakerphone, please make sure your mute function is turned off to allow your signal to reach our equipment. Also, if you pressed *1 earlier during today's call, please press *1 again to ensure our equipment has captured your signal. We'll pause for just a moment. Once again, that is *1 to ask a question over the telephone. And our first question will be from Jeremy Fowler with CBS Sports.
Hi, Brian. You talked about building around defense. What's the most important component of a defensive blueprint when you're first starting out?
I think you have to make sure that it's valued within your program, and when I say valued, through your recruiting efforts, an emphasis on taking players that can impact your defense, and in particular against the rush. So if the blueprint, you know, was public, it would talk about right out of the gates finding those guys that physically can control the line of scrimmage.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Once again, that is *1 if you would like to ask a question over the telephone. And it appears there are no further telephone questions.
Tyler.
Right, kind of in the same vein that Pete was going, how can you distinguish yourself from a school like Stanford when you guys are so similar with a strong academic program and with success on the football field? When you're recruiting from the same pool as those guys, what can you guys do to distinguish from Stanford?
Well, we think we have many, many distinctions that are unique to Notre Dame. And we make sure that recruits that are looking at Stanford and looking at Notre Dame understand what we believe to be those distinctions. So we clearly see them, and we make sure that the recruits understand that there are some clear distinctions between Notre Dame and Stanford. Thank you.
All right, thanks, everyone.